All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight here at The Volume. Happy Tuesday, everybody. I hope all of you guys are having a great night so far. In case you missed it earlier, we did break down Lakers Nuggets in a separate video on this feed if you scroll back a little bit further. But in this video, we're going to be breaking down the Phoenix Suns going into San Francisco on the road to beat the Golden State Warriors on opening night. We're going to be breaking that game down from the perspective of both teams. You guys know the drill before we get started. This is our new YouTube channel. Hoops Tonight now has its own YouTube channel. I sincerely appreciate all of you guys who have subscribed already. We somehow got to over 10,000 subs in less than a week, and it just is so humbling, and I'm so incredibly thankful for you guys for rocking with us and helping us get that channel off the ground. If you haven't done so yet, if you guys could take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button, it would mean a lot to me. Don't forget about our social media feeds as well, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. That's where we're going to be doing video content throughout the year, as well as show announcements. And then our podcast feed under Hoops Tonight. And then we're going to be doing mailbag questions throughout the season at the end of shows. We're not going to do it tonight, but throughout the season, we're going to be doing mailbag questions at the end of shows. So drop mailbag questions about anything. Doesn't even have to be basketball related in the YouTube comments, and we'll hit those at the tail end of our shows. And the last but not least, before we get started, obviously my Arizona Diamondbacks just made it to the World Series, which I'm super excited about. So we still have a couple weeks of baseball. We have the NFL that's deep in the swing of things. Obviously, college football's in the heart of the season. And now we have the return of the NBA and college basketball right around the corner. So there's no shortage of events to attend right now. And all summer long, we've had concerts and comedy shows. And so with all of this, there's a lot of tickets out there for these events. And the best way to get tickets to any of these events is on Game Time, the fastest growing ticketing app in the United States. So for amazing last minute deals on tickets to your favorite football team, baseball team, basketball team, musician, comedian, Game Time has your tickets. And it's not just sports, it's also your favorite concerts and comedy shows as well. Download the Game Time app and redeem code HOOPS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the Game Time app, enter code HOOPS, that's HOOPS, for $20 off. No matter where you live, get out and have some fun this week. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So I had a radio hit this morning in Phoenix. And it was funny because we ended up talking D-backs for about a third of it. But it's just, you have to understand, man, baseball was like such a huge thing for me growing up. It was like literally all I did until I picked up a basketball, because I kind of got into basketball late. So like I'd go to school, go to Little League practice, and then I'd go watch the D-backs every single night. And so this playoff run has like thrown me for a loop, because it's like, it makes me feel like I'm a kid again. Tonight, honest to God, was really difficult to navigate doing my job while also watching one of the most stressful baseball games that I've ever watched, the D-backs on the road in Philly against the terrifying bats of Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber. And I would love to never see a Zach Wheeler sweeper or four-seamer or two-seamer ever again in my life. That was absolutely terrifying. But after we talked to some D-backs on the radio this morning, we talked some Suns. And before the interview, I was doing some research on the Suns preseason, just a deeper dive. And Devin Booker was 13 for 23 on pull-up jump shots in preseason. And I'm like, that's freaking insane. So like last year in the regular season, he was a hair under 50% on effective field goal percentage on pull-up jump shots. And then he went way up to like almost 60% in the postseason. And then in the preseason, he's at like almost 75% in effective field goal percentage. I'm like, man, it feels like Devin Booker's kind of taking a leap. And then last year, in the regular season was the first time that it really dawned on me just how advanced of a playmaker Devin Booker has become in this phase of his career. And so as I was sitting down on the computer, I'm looking at Devin Booker's age, and I'm like, he hit all these crazy pull-up jump shots last year. Remember that Game 3, Game 4 sequence against Denver when he got like so outrageously hot? It was one of the hottest shooting streaks that we've ever seen from a pull-up jump shooter in the postseason. And I remember, though, the whole thing was like, and I'm guilty of this as well, we're all like, he's just not going to keep making these, right? Like, he's going to eventually start missing, right? And don't get me wrong, I don't expect him to shoot 75% on him forever. But, people used to say that thing about Steph. He's never going to be able to just consistently shoot threes at this level, right? And I started looking at the basketball reference page, and I'm like, holy shit, like Devin Booker is only 26 years old. And Steph Curry in his 2015 MVP season, his first MVP season, was when he was 26 years old. And all I could think of is like, you could make a legitimate case that Devin Booker was the best player on the Suns last year. And I still think Devin Booker's a better player than I still think Kevin Durant's a better player than Devin Booker overall. I think he deserves that kind of like benefit of the doubt right now. But here's the thing, like if Devin Booker takes a leap and he becomes a better player than Kevin Durant, not through some sort of decline from Kevin Durant, but just through his own ascension to bona fide superstardom, that completely changes the calculus for everything surrounding this Phoenix Suns team, because he is now playing like a top 5 player in the world and has been for a really long time. He played like a top 5 player all preseason. He played like a top 5 player all postseason. This is not a blip. This is a trend of Devin Booker ascending to the level of the players at the top of the league. And again, like we talked about all that pull-up jump shooting, but down the stretch, it was 3 playmaking possessions from Devin Booker that turned this game around. So we have a classic high pick and roll on the right side of the floor. 2 go to the ball. Again, we talk about this concept a lot, especially with the Suns. The idea of defending pick and roll 3-on-2 and the need to have a guy in the weak side corner that can like knock down shots, right? And we're going to talk about Josh Okogie in a minute because he hits this one. But like what ends up happening in a lot of these cases is when you put 2 to the ball. So like Devin Booker's got the basketball. He's dribbling to his right, coming off of a ball screen. The guy who's guarding him is trailing him from behind. In this case, I think it was Gary Payton. So Gary Payton's coming from behind. Kevon Looney, the screen defender, is up at the level of the screen to try to stop the Devin Booker pull-up jump shot that's going in every single damn time. Well, the low man is the player that is guarding Josh Okogie in the weak side corner. And he's coming over and he's basically defending the action 3-on-2. And in that case, if you don't have a playmaker that has the ability to make that cross-court skip pass to the shooting pocket for the shooter in the weak side corner. I've talked about that all summer long and all preseason long. The playmakers that are capable of making the cross-court feed over the top of the defense when teams guard pick and roll 3-on-2, because it's difficult to get high enough to make that pass. Usually the low man's a little bit of an athlete. Now, that's not necessarily the case with the Golden State Warriors in this particular game, but like there's typically a lot of length on the ball. There's length in the pick and roll defender, right? It's usually an athlete that's coming up to the level of the screen, an athlete trailing the play, and an athlete that's the low man. And it's difficult to get enough separation from the perimeter defenders to elevate over the top and make that pass. And Devin Booker was able to make that pass. Then on the very next possession, they run this interesting kind of like variation of Spain pick and roll with Eric Gordon, where Eric Gordon has the ball, he gives the ball to Devin Booker, they clear out. Nurkic comes up and sets the ball screen. After Nurkic sets the screen, literally Eric Gordon goes over and screens Kevon Looney. And on that play, because Eric Gordon screens Kevon Looney and Kevon Looney can't help Devin Booker on that pull-up jump shot, Steph Curry, who's the guy guarding Eric Gordon, has to basically hedge or show on that Devin Booker pull-up. And because of that, when he shows, Eric Gordon pops to the three-point line. Kevon Looney, because he's a big man, is accustomed to kind of staying in the ball screen action. He kind of leaks back towards the middle. Steph has to close out all the way to the wing. Devin Booker, on time, on target, hits Eric Gordon in the shooting pocket. Steph is too slow to close out, and he knocks down the shot. And then finally, the biggest possession of the game after Steph hits the 3 on the offensive rebound to get it back to 2, they go down another Devin Booker, Yusuf Nurkic pick and roll, 2 to the ball, right? We have Gary Payton chasing over the top, Looney's showing high, Booker just elevates. This time they don't help as much, they don't aggressively help from the weak side corner, so Nurkic is able to catch on the run. Nurkic catches on the run and makes the driving layup. One of the biggest narratives surrounding this Phoenix Suns team is like, they need a point guard. They need a point guard. And don't get me wrong, like I think you saw the absence of Bradley Beal tonight when Kevin Durant was kind of not having a very great game by his standards. And so every single time Devin Booker went off the floor, there was kind of a crater in the Suns' kind of offensive flow, so to speak, right? And Bradley Beal is going to help with that just because it allows you to constantly have 2 of those guys on the floor. But they don't need a point guard. It's like talking about the Celtics needing a point guard. At the end of the day, it's your top tier ball handler, your number one guy that you're giving the basketball to at the end of the game, and his ability to make plays off the bounce for your team and to constantly get the defense in rotation, which allows you to make the right reads out of that and get quality shots. As long as you have that, you don't need a point guard. And so, like, again, like if Devin Booker is going to play like this, the way he's played now for the better part of a year, it's not about what you can get from the point guard position. Devin Booker is your primary shot creator down the stretch of these games. Devin Booker finished the game with 32 points, 6 rebounds, and 8 assists on 13 for 21 shooting. Did have 6 turnovers, is something to keep an eye on. But I just have been blown away by him. And again, like Kevin Durant struggled a little bit with the physicality of Golden State. leaned on a lot of really tough, like fadeaway jump shots out of the post, and he wasn't making them. And look, here's the thing. Kevin Durant's going to figure it out. Kevin Durant, like just last season, shot 60% on pull-up twos. So KD's going to figure it out. But like if Devin Booker's going to be better than KD, that's fantastic news for the Suns. Because now you're not talking about, a single top 5 player and then another top 15 player and then another top 30 player. You're talking about 2 top 6 or 7 players before you get to Bradley Beal. That completely changes the math. Especially since the only other team that has 2 top 10 players in the league are LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and they're both on the tail end of that top 10, right? And if you have 2 players that are in legitimate conversation for being top tier superstars, that kind of flips that talent equation into a crazy direction. NBA fans, the wait is over. Basketball is back, and DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA, is celebrating with an unbeatable offer. New customers can score $200 instantly in bonus bets for throwing down $5 on the NBA. Win or lose, it doesn't matter. You'll start the season with an instant dub. And with DraftKings parlays, everyone's got a shot at an even bigger basketball win. String together multiple bets from the same game or build your parlay across multiple games for a shot at making your payday even sweeter. Basketball's more fun when you're in on the action. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code HOOPS. That's HOOPS. New customers can get $200 in bonus bets instantly for betting just $5. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code HOOPS. The crown is yours. I wanted to shout out Josh Okogie. So we talked about the corner 3. And again, that's the big thing. Like, like when this team is healthy, you have that question. It's like, are you going to put, if we have Beal, Booker, Durant at the 4, you need another perimeter player out there. And ideally, that's a guy who can guard at the point of attack and a guy that can consistently make the defense pay for not guarding him in situations like that, tagging the roller situation that Josh Okogie got the wide open corner 3. Well, the conversation kind of coming into this was like, do you want Josh Okogie, who's this like wrecking ball of an athlete who could do all these things but is going to struggle to make the offensive plays? Or would you rather have, Grayson Allen, a guy who's like going to be more reliable, allegedly, although he couldn't shoot tonight, but a more reliable, or an Eric Gordon as another option, a guy who's going to be more reliable to knock down those shots, but not bring you the same level of defensive upside that you get from Josh Okogie. And that was a big moment tonight for Josh Okogie to show that in a huge possession at the end of a game, when he was completely ignored in a 3-on-2 situation in pick and roll, that when Devin Booker trusted him to knock down the shot, he rose up and he knocked the shot down. And when you combine that with everything else he does, because he wreaks havoc at the point of attack with his physicality and his athleticism, slashing off the wing, like just catching and ripping and going to the rim. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but it has to do with this specific type of athlete. The transition drives that he had in this game, getting all the way to the rim, crashing the offensive glass. He had 4 offensive rebounds. Finished the game with 17 points. And like if he's going to knock down the big corner 3s when they matter, then forget about the some of the other issues that this roster has. If Josh Okogie is going to be available to help in those situations and reliable on the offensive end, that just solves a bunch of your problems. And this kind of goes back to the conversation we had surrounding Bruce Brown in the postseason last year. That little bit shorter, little bit stockier, stout, athletic wing with long arms, right? Not the tall, lanky, kind of like high center of gravity, Herb Jones, Jaden McDaniels type. I'm talking more like the fire hydrants, the guys that are like 6'6", 6'7", usually about 220 pounds or more, usually super long arms and freaky athletic. The Bruce Browns, the Terrence Manns, the Josh Okogies. We're seeing that type of player become immensely valuable in the modern NBA. And a huge reason for that, in my opinion, is as the game is spread out more and become more perimeter oriented and more skill oriented, you have a lot of thin players on the floor. Guys that aren't especially strong and stout at their position. And when you have a low center of gravity, it's extremely difficult to cut that player off on a drive. Does that make sense? Like if you have a high center of gravity, if I slide my feet and I initiate some sort of contact, like a hip check or a little bit of a hand check, I can probably contain you in that situation. But if you have a low center of gravity, even if I do put my hand on you or I do kind of hip check you, you can blow through that because your center of gravity is low and you're bringing a lot of power to that drive. And that's what allowed Bruce Brown to like just rip through D'Angelo Russell all the way to the rim. That's what allows, a Bruce Brown or Josh Okogie or Terrence Mann to crash the offensive glass and be very difficult to box out. Because there's thinner, skinnier players that are trying to wrap their arms around and box a player like that out that brings that athleticism to the table. Again, we got to keep an eye on that because teams aren't going to respond to this one game with Josh Okogie hitting that corner three and then just start guarding him all the time. Like they're going to ignore him a lot in those situations, and we'll see in the bigger picture if he can make enough of those shots. But I thought it was a super encouraging first game from Josh Okogie. And in general, a super impressive win for the Suns. You got nothing from Grayson Allen. Eric Gordon was ice cold until he hit those 2 late threes. I think one was on an offensive rebound, and then we talked about that kind of like weird, funky Spain pick and roll possession that they ran. Kevin Durant was 7 for 22 from the field. And as a team, you had 19 turnovers. And you went on the road into one of the hardest places in the NBA to win on the road, and you got to win. Huge win for the Phoenix Suns. I thought it was really impressive. Showdown with the Lakers on Thursday in LA. It's going to be a fun one. The Lakers are going to want to get a bounce-back win. It's a bad matchup for the Lakers because they have weak point of attack defense. I think that Thursday night game is going to be really fun. We will be breaking that game down immediately after it's over. One other positive note for the Suns. I thought Nurkic, again, defensively he was a mess, and that's something they're going to have to figure out. Did have a big late block, though, on Jonathan Kuminga. Jonathan Kuminga kind of randomly just decided to co-opt a possession in semi-transition, kind of forced things. But Nurkic made a nice play helping from the left elbow and came down and made a nice block. But he did rebound the hell out of the basketball. You saw his size be really imposing. Nurkic is legitimately very big. Had that big play on the roll late where he kind of caught the pass from Devin Booker on the slip and went to the basket. And you saw his screening be a factor in this game, his ability to get his perimeter players separation. And then just in general, shout out to Frank Vogel. He's done a really nice job breeding a culture of physicality and commitment to the defensive end of the floor from the Suns in training camp to this point. On to the Warriors. Obviously, Draymond's out. And again, I know Warriors fans are always so up and down on Draymond. I think it's just because he's friends with LeBron, and a lot of the stan culture surrounding Steph Curry really struggles to identify that players could be friends with rivals and stuff like that. But the reality is Draymond is every bit as important to the Warriors defense as Steph Curry is to the Warriors offense. That has been statistically proven over the course of this last decade. I don't think it's debatable at this point. When you take him off the floor, it just gets infinitely harder for this Warriors team to get stops. And you even saw that just from the standpoint of offensive execution. They went with Kuminga late, I think in large part because they needed another athlete on the floor alongside Looney. But I could see a universe where if Draymond's out there, you might be able to get away with Dario Saric at the 4. And if Dario Saric is at the 4, that opens up a bunch of other things for you offensively, right? And so, again, I don't think you could have gone with Saric down the stretch because of that. Saric had a little bit of a rough night. But I think that Draymond being out really does have a lot of collateral damage that Warriors fans in a lot of cases don't acknowledge. That's not an excuse for the loss. It's a quality win for Phoenix. But Draymond being out certainly plays a big role in the way that the Warriors play on both ends of the floor. Some positives, though. I thought Jonathan Kuminga showed some really impressive individual defense on Kevin Durant. Again, the decision-making thing is there. You had that weird semi-transition drive at the end. Those are the kinds of things where it's hey, dude, there's 4 minutes left. Get the ball to Steph Curry instead of trying to force the action, right? He was actually really impactful on the offensive glass, even though he missed that a couple of free throws late that would have helped. But overall, you're seeing more of the upside of Jonathan Kuminga, and I thought his defensive possessions on Kevin Durant were super encouraging. Again, Chris Paul shot poorly, and I don't want to get on Chris Paul about that because everybody on the Warriors shot poorly. The Warriors shot 36% from the field, 23% from 3. Steph and Klay couldn't make their threes. Andrew Wiggins was awful. I don't want to get on Chris Paul's shooting. I thought the fit from a basketball perspective made a lot of sense. Having him as a late game ball handler really seemed to allow Steph Curry more freedom offensively to play the way he likes to play normally, not have to have the ball in his hands all the time. They actually got a really good look, a Chris Paul pull-up mid-range jump shot that put the lead to 1 late because they had Steph set a ball screen. And when you have Chris Paul coming off of a Steph-led double ball screen, you're going to get an open look every time because they're going to prioritize covering Steph in that action. He got an easy little 15-footer. So I'm really interested to see how that kind of shapes out in the long run. I think the Chris Paul fit has gone better than I expected so far through camp and the first regular season game. Moses Moody played really well in the first half. I thought that was encouraging. But like the reason you can't contend without Draymond if your best players don't play well, and they just didn't play well. I thought Steph didn't play particularly well. He hit some big shots, obviously, but like I thought he really struggled defensively and on the glass. They were throwing him in a ton of action at the top of the key where he was having to hedge and recover. The Suns were consistently attacking him in almost every action. He missed a lot of box outs in this game. Again, every star has bad games. I didn't think it was Steph's best game. Klay Thompson didn't play particularly well. Andrew Wiggins was mostly awful. So like I just don't understand how you can even hope to win a game like this without Draymond Green if none of your stars play well. And I mean, that was the thing. Like even down the stretch, Klay Thompson left-handed layup, left it short on the rim. Like Steph Curry missed a couple of threes late. Like it just wasn't, they just didn't have the firepower they needed from their best guys to contend in a game like this. One other note on the Warriors, they're small. And, you saw that, I mean, when Nurkic is towering over you, that's kind of an issue, right? And you saw it happen a lot on long rebounds, contested rebounds. We talked about the inability to box out guys like Jordan Goodwin and Josh Okogie just because of their strength and athleticism crashing from the perimeter. They need their guards to compete more, especially in games like this when Draymond's out. We don't know how much longer he's going to be out. And so, like, especially going into the rest of this week, I just want to see Steph and Klay in particular compete more on the glass and defensively because right now they don't have enough defensively to get enough stops to allow them to coast on that end of the floor. That was a big area of opportunity in this game. Lots of stuff for Steve Kerr to look at on film for them to get better at. They committed a ton of fouls again. That's been an issue nonstop over the last couple of years for the Warriors. They just fouled too much. And, you kind of saw that in that third quarter run for the Warriors. I think they outscored the Suns 40-19. They stopped fouling, which allowed them to force Phoenix to make some shots, which they missed a lot. And then the Warriors were able to run the floor. And when they get out in transition, that's when they're at their best. That's when they get energized. And that's when they start to get easy shots in transition, which allows them to set their defense, which allows them to get more stops, which allows them to get out and transition more. It's like a cascading effect. But when they're constantly fouling, they're constantly setting up for free throws, and now the other team is setting their defense. And now you have to go down the floor, and Steph has to have 3 dudes hanging on him while he's trying to run off of screens again. And that just gets fatiguing, right? So I just didn't think it was an overly well-played game for the Warriors, and I'm sure they're going to have a lot to talk about in the film session. All right, guys, that is all I have for tonight. As always, I sincerely appreciate you for supporting the show. We will be back tomorrow with the show at the end of the ESPN slate. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you then.